Hi everybody, it's crazy, it's Monday, and it's time for the UPBGE video of the week. Now, before I get started, gotta give a shout out to my trusted, because you guys rock, to my crazy fam, I love you guys, and to my patrons, thank you for your continued support. Now, we're up to episode number 41, and we left off last week with the Constraint Actuator. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop over here to my UPBGE, and hopefully you've got yours open so you can actually look as well, and I've put up a Constraint Actuator, which is right here, and you can just go ahead and grab it, and it puts one right there for you, okay? And I'm going to read, and let's get started. Okay, the Constraint Actuator takes control over your object, position, and orientation. You can use it to make sure that an object is always close to the ground, which is probably the most popular application of it. If you are into physics demos and sci-fi games, you might use it to simulate an anti-gravitational field. What if you want to make a bop bag? A constraint actuator will make it for you. Well, you do have to set it up. Okay, so we're going to start off with the location constraint. With the location constraint option, the actuator will move your object inside a specific range from this point to this point, okay? That's the location constraint. Okay, it doesn't have to happen right away, and this is one of the beauties of it. You can set a dampening factor which will determine how many frames it will take for the object to get in the right position. This produces very smooth results. So your dampening factor, so I just put it up to 2 frames, okay? So after the second frame, it will be set to where somewhere in between my 1 and 2 blender units, okay? And it's located on the Z constraint, okay? So anything between 1 and 2 blender units will make it bob. You know, at first it'll bob and then it'll sit down. You know, it'll sit at a relative level. The min and max are global coordinates and can only restrict one axis at a time. So you can't do all three of these at one time. You actually have to have one for each one. And then you have to set the min max values and the dampening for each one. Okay? To lock your object into a 3-dimensional cage, you need 3 distinct constraint actuators. This will give you full control over the range of positions where your object should be, okay? Now, on the distance constraint, we'll go to that one next. This is a pretty big one here. The distance constraint option compares and controls the distance between your object and nearby objects, okay? So your object is right here and your nearby object. So if you have another object out here, or another thing, like say for this plane, it will interact with it, okay? It controls the distance between those two. You first have to determine which axis you want to use for the distance check, okay? That would be this little guy right here. The direction, do you want it on the z-axis, negative z-axis, negative y, negative x, so on and so forth, okay? I always try to do it on the negative z-axis because you want to. I try to hold mine to the ground. All right. If you toggle the L button, which is this little guy right here, the actuator uses the object axis. Otherwise, it uses the global one. You remember global and local. Okay, same thing. The game engine will cast a ray in that direction and try to find a surface that has the game property or the material specified with the M and P option. That's these two. Let's see, where's that? Right there. This one right here. Okay, you got material and property. So, say for example, I have this set as ground. Oops, no, not this one. Let's go ahead and just take that one out. Yeah, I've got to go to this one, okay? And we'll make this one called ground. Ground. There we go. Okay. And then we come back over to this one. So now if I put in property ground, okay, hit in and get rid of that so we can actually see our full deal here. Okay, so now it will interact with the ground property. So since this is ground, or it's got the property of ground, it's going to tell you, it's going to look for that every time. It's going to do something on the negative z axis towards that. Okay, so anything going this way, so anything underneath here, it's going to pick up. So you can actually have it sense ground. Okay. Option. Okay. It uses the range to determine the maximum length of the casted ray. If the ray hits a face, the following options will be considered. Okay. Force distance sets the new distance between your object and the found hit surface. So where's the distance at there? Force distance. Okay. So say, for example, you've got your physics set up to where you don't have no gravity, and you want to make it to where your character is stuck to the ground. You can actually set this force distance, okay, and you can have it like, say, 0.5 of a blender unit, okay, basically half a meter. All right, so if it gets above a half a meter, it's going to lose where it's at. Okay, so it's going to say, okay, at half a meter is the distance. Most of the time, everybody just usually hits 1. Okay, so at 1 blender unit or 1 meter, it will cast that far down. So say if you got some land that actually goes up and down like this, and your character goes to move, and it gets out of that range, it should tilt it and go with it. Okay, that's depending. Okay, so dampening. Okay, that's where's that one at? Right here. Okay, so dampening. The number of frames for the repositioning to be complete. Okay, I've got it set to 2. All right. In, which is right here, this little guy right here, turn it on, and your object will be aligned with the normal of the found hit surface. So when you have this on, and this set with a little bit of a dampening factor with the property ground, then this will automatically stick to that ground, stick to it, okay? And it will only allow it to go 1 meter, okay? And its range is 2. So if your ground moves, it will tilt and it will follow that face, each face, no matter which way the face is going, okay? Rot dampening. The number of frames to complete the alignment rotation, okay? So that's clamp. It's supposed to be, yeah, that's dampening, okay? So say, for example, you're going this way and then it drops off. You want it to tilt to it as well. So you've got a little bit of dampening cushion for that as well. So you could put like that for 2 frames as well. So within 2 frames, as your character moves, it's going to follow the curvature and also tilt in that direction. A lot of times, way back when, it used to go across, and then the square would stay the same no matter which way you go, so it didn't tilt with it. So you want it to be able to tilt with it. That's what the rotation dampening means. Okay, let's see here. Until a negative signal do us part. This actuator will be active as soon as it is triggered and will remain active until it receives a negative signal or can no longer find a surface, for example, the floor, in the given range. If you want to keep your actuator active even when it doesn't find a surface to be constrained to, you can turn on the persistency, or the per option, which is right here. You can turn that one on. Okay, if time is greater than 0, it will set the maximum activation period of the actuator. Okay, so you can actually set the time. Okay, if you get it set greater than 0, it will set it to that time. Okay, orientation constraint. Let's go to that one next. Orientation. Okay, this one right here will make it tilt, bobble, whatever. Okay, you might want to have something that as you move to a certain area, it tilts or moves a certain way. Okay, instead of affecting your object's position, the orientation constraint option will restrict its rotation on individual axes. Okay, so it will do it against these axes. So rotation this way on Z, hang on, we'll just come over here and just do, this one, rotate X, this one, and rotate Y. On these axes, it will do that. Okay, you can actually have that constrained. It aligns the specified axis with the reference direction. For example, if you want to make your bot bag stay straight, you can use Z as direction and 0, 0, 1 as the reference direction. Okay, so 0, 0, 1. Okay, and I'll even put them in there. 0, 0, oops, I did 10, 0, and 1. Okay. As with other constraint, with the other, say that 5 times fast. As with the other constraint actuator options, you can set min-max angles, dampening frames, and the time. So we have about the same. Here goes your angles. You can have it, let's say from 0 to 45. Okay. You only want it to go in a 45-degree angle. You don't want it 90. You want it to go in 45. There's different ways. Or you can go from 45 to 90. Let's see, 0. Okay, so that way you can only go from these two positions here. Okay, like that. All right, force field constraint. Now this one's a fun one because a buddy of mine did one with that. And he tried to explain it to me, and I never could understand why he did it the way he did it. But now reading about it, it actually helps me understand it more, because this is years ago before I even started looking at this book, and I didn't understand why he used a force field constraint, because there's no force fields in Blender, is there? Yes, there is. So, all right, so let's just continue on. The force field constraint simulates a spring field underneath your object. Okay, the effect is similar to hovering above water or simply buoyancy. Okay, ever playing, you're in water and your character's doing the bob? Yeah, that's what a force field constraint is good for. Force fields can also be set with a physics setting in the material panel. Okay, so if you come over to the material panel, you can actually set it up there as well, but that will be covered in chapter 6. We'll get to that later. Okay, the special options are as follows. You got force, which is this little guy right here, which is spring force of the force field. Okay, so that's how much force is applied. Your distance, which is this little guy right here, height of the force field. So this gauges how high the force field is. Okay, rot FH, which would be right there, aligns the object axis with the normal of the force field. So if your normal is on the z-axis, then it will go with that normal. Okay, N, which is this little guy right here, okay, adds a horizontal force to the slopes of the field. Okay, so it adds a horizontal force to that slope, whatever the slope is. The rest of the options behave as the ones presented for the other constraint actuator types. Direction, MP, per, time, dampening, and damp rotation. So all these little guys right here. If you notice that a lot of these stayed the same as I went through, and these popped up. Okay, I haven't set the direction. We'll go ahead and set it for -Z because we want it to bounce like Tigger. Okay. All right, and now the next one. Let's see how I want to scroll through. How much time do we got? Yeah, we're gonna have to call that one that. Okay, so let me scroll back up here. Okay, let's do that. Yep. Oh. Okay, there we go. All right, we're gonna end off with edit object, and we'll do that next week. Okay. Oh. There we go. Okay, and we'll continue on with that next week. So edit object will be our next one. Hope you learned a little bit about the constraint actuator. Hopefully that helped a little bit with getting a little bit of idea what's going on. Like I said, after we get past this little bit of a learning stage with the logic brick, we're gonna start actually using them later on. So get a little bit ahead of yourself, or stay a little bit behind, and come here every Monday and check it out. So we'll leave it at that for this week, and we should see y'all next week.